It's actually a little bit unsettling to think that each of them might have unique talents and even the potential to be a hero. Not so much that I drive more carefully or anything, but after playing Watch Dogs Legion, I think about it a little bit more. Legion's clever twist makes this third game in the series play like a hacker version of State of Decay, where every NPC can be recruited as a playable character, and each has their own weapons, abilities, and traits that can give them very different playstyles. That lends it a much more sandboxy feel than the previous games because any given character can make the same mission feel dramatically different. It could be rough and experimental in places, but I have to hand it to Ubisoft for being willing to take chances like this. Dogs 2's compressed version of the San Francisco Bay Area. It is beautifully detailed and immediately recognizable, but this time it's also starkly different from how we know it. Its skies are dense with autonomous drones patrolling the streets and ferrying parcels. Streets are filled with a mix of old gas guzzlers and Tesla-style self-driving cars, and its landmarks are emblazoned with corporate fascist banners and bright holographic projections. It's a cool look though. Cruising around busy areas can definitely take you a frame rate even on the GeForce RTX. Even without ray tracing I couldn't get close to holding 60 FPS when I was moving fast. I've definitely seen most of these same ideas in movies and TV in the past decade, but it does have some decent villains going for it, including a totalitarian tech mogul and a ruthless leader of human trafficking gangsters. Your ally characters meanwhile are all fairly bland and forgettable, but DedSec's resident smart-ass AI Bagley is a genuinely funny, persistent voice in your ear who playfully mocks your human abilities without becoming a GLaDOS knockoff. There's plenty of it too. If you're stopping on the winding road toward uncovering the identity of the mysterious zero-day terrorists to do side quests, recruitment missions, and collect optional stuff, I could see a playthrough lasting you in the neighborhood for 40 hours. Controlling the entire team and can swap between them at will. More than that, the big idea of the Legion is that virtually any NPC can be recruited into DedSec, and that system is pretty well realized. Just walk up to anybody you see on the street, scan them to check out their abilities, and you can do the mission for them. Usually something involving beating up some gangsters or wiping incriminating evidence from a server. And then they'll join up and become playable. Whether it's a construction worker, stockbroker, a medic, a protester, a hitman, or even a security guard, they can all be recruited in one way or another. So sometimes you have to work a little harder by drilling down into their personal profile to find ways to win them over. I didn't see a lot of repetition in my single playthrough, though if you choose to spend your time recruiting an army, you're bound to see some of the same quests. Voices are changed up by modulating them heavily, which can lead to some people sounding as though they're in the witness protection program, and the lip syncing overall isn't really great. And Crash as far as I've seen. I miss them a bit, but I don't mind Legion breaking out the series habits a little. Speaking of which, the extremely arcadey driving is pretty thoroughly defantasized. Only a handful of story missions involve driving vehicles at all, and police chases are trivial to avoid. Someone with lots of heavy weapons, like a military veteran, to shoot your way through most missions with relatively straightforward gunfights, or just about anybody can use cameras and tiny spy drones. To reach an objective and hack it without ever physically setting foot in an encounter area. Alternatively, recruiting a member of the private police corporation and using them to infiltrate guarded areas plays like a hitman game, so that you can stroll through undetected as long as you don't let anybody get too close to look at you. There are a lot of possibilities, and the intricate level design goes a long way toward enabling you to come up with different ways to approach most of the scenarios, including using the construction worker's slow-flying cargo drone to bypass half a mission. That sort of thing. It does give you some overall progression as you go through the campaign, and I like how there's unlocked using technical points you gather by exploring the world and going out of your way to find during missions. It's a good way to encourage you to investigate every area of the map, rather than just racking up XP with headshots. However, this leaves you the money earned feeling pretty useless, since it's only used to unlocking closed options and have no impact on gameplay. Similarly, just like in Watch Dogs 2, the emphasis on non-lethal weaponry is puzzling because it functions pretty much identically to bullets, and no one seems to be keeping track of how many corpses you leave in DedSec's wake. That's all just for us to roleplay as non-murderous vigilantes if we chose to, I suppose. One of the most daring alternations to the typical open world action game setup that Legion makes, though, is that these characters are all expendable, and that changes the way the death works in very effective ways. By default, getting shot, beaten down, or blown up in a mission sends a character to the hospital, prison, and they're unavailable while they recover or pay their debt to society, as they represent by a timer on their portrait in the team screen. But if you're playing with a permadeath enabled, as I did, the stakes of every mission immediately feel much higher than in any GTA style game I've ever played. Permanently. Sure, some of them are easily replaceable. Every construction worker or guard has the same abilities, for instance. But the special characters are hard to come by. I've had come memorably close calls where I narrowly avoided death, plus a couple of losses I'd classify as some bullshit. Like when my car barely nudged an explosive barrel I didn't even see and instantly exploded. I'd have thought it was a bug, but I didn't, because I hadn't been recording the footage. Even when things look dire, a tactical retreat can save your beacon. A cheap upgrade allows you to do a free melee insta-kill on a bad guy every 30 seconds or so, which makes it easier to get out of trouble when you're caught sneaking around, provided you're not in a crowded room. And thankfully there's barely any fall damage, because dying because you misjudge a jump by a few feet would be an awful way to go. Even if you do lose some people, or if they randomly kidnapped off the street, yes, this happens quite a bit, don't worry, it's going to be fine. Yes, your game will end if you have no more agents available, but getting more isn't hard, and battling will frequently point you toward new elite types to recruit. More than that, I found I earned a fair number of recruits just by marking people I see who have potential for later recruitment, and then happening upon ways to earn their royalty almost by accident. For instance, you will occasionally see a character with a red icon over their heads, identifying that there's an adversary of someone you know, and eliminating them will earn you a new recruit. Those aren't the only connections you'll spot. Icons over random pedestrians' heads will indicate that they are related to one of your recruits somehow, either by family or friends or lovers. One time I came across an elderly woman with an icon over her head, and when I scanned it, she revealed she was the grandmother of one of my characters I've gotten killed, saying he died fighting or something. That was a nice little touch that added to the illusion of all these NPCs being actual people. Even with all this, I often found myself wishing Legion had gone even further to differentiate these mortal characters, and given me some real reasons to take people with negative traits. I've seen characters with the hiccups who alert enemies around them to their presence, and even someone with a trait called Doomed, who had a chance to spontaneously die for no reason. But why would I play as them if they have no powerful skills to balance them out? I also crave the opportunity to invest in individuals and make them even more powerful, but also take a bigger blow if I lost them. In fact, there's a whole world of roguelike design ideas out there that Legion only seems to have scratched the surface of. In a year, that included games like Hades and Spelunky 2. I have loved to see it push the envelope a little further, this writing. So if you can wait for a few patches to smooth things out, that might be a good call. Switching to DirectX 11 instead of 12 solving a lot of my PC stability issues.